podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello everyone and welcome to How Are the Podcast. It's Gav and you join us for another episode of the pod from the vault as we delve into the Roker Report archives to bring you an episode that you haven't heard previously, a recording which was done 2 or 3 years ago now when Chris spoke to former Sunderland defender Michael Turner about his time at the club and his time on Wearside. Michael Turner, who of course signed for the club in 2009 when Steve Bruce was manager, when we were in the Premier League, played alongside the likes of John Mensah and Phil Bardsley in that defence, was an imposing presence at the back, I would say. Scored a memorable goal in a game against Wolves at the Stadium of Light. We talked all about his career at the Stadium of Light and, of course, how things ended and then what he went on to do afterwards, and a little bit about the start of his career in pre-season when he was at Charlton as well. So this is one which you haven't previously heard, as I said before. We didn't release this on our feeds back in the day, but with it being the summer, with us being a daily podcast, we thought we'd drop some of these nuggets in for you to enjoy over the summer. Anyways, onto the pod. Here's Chris. Enjoy.
We're after a bit of a break following, well, my recovery from Wembley. We're looking back once again to speak to a former player. And today's guest played for the club during arguably the most successful period in our recent history. He was a classy central defender signed by Steve Bruce from Hull City in 2009 and went on to make 77 appearances in a red and white shirt before moving on in 2012. Today, we are very pleased to be speaking to Michael Turner. Hello, Michael.
Hi, Chris. How you doing?
I'm not bad, thanks. Thanks for joining us. How's your summer going so far?
Yeah, nice. Yeah, obviously it's a really warm one today. So just trying to stay out of the sun as much as possible. But yeah, loving this. Obviously summertime, bit of golf, and cracking on a few barbecues. So yeah, all good.
Yeah, it's probably worth flagging up that we are recording on possibly the hottest day in the history of temperatures, I think. So being an unfit lad like I am means I'm struggling a bit, to be fair, because it is pretty hot. I was going to say, actually, I assume it's times like these, though, Michael, that you don't really miss pre-season.
No, certainly not. I always remember going back for pre-season, sort of 1st of July or around that time, and always being hot weather and having to do long laps and running perimeters of training grounds and stuff like that. So I certainly do not miss those times, that's for sure.
So who was the biggest taskmaster during pre-season? Who kind of whipped you in the kind of fitness side of things? Which manager kind of pushed the limits during pre-season?
It definitely would have been sort of when I first started, I think. Probably when I was at Charlton when I was young. I remember doing pre-season with the first team and in Kirbyshire put us through our paces quite a bit. But then as I got older and sort of the techniques of how pre-season was run, it all changed. I wouldn't say it become easier, but it was certainly different. It's all done one on, one off, so to say. It's all like 4 minutes working and 4 minutes off, instead of all like the 20-minute runs and running here, there, and everywhere as you did, when I was sort of 18. Well, I definitely enjoyed pre-season more, but as I got older, really, and as the way things changed.
Yeah. Well, actually, I mean, I didn't realise. I mean, I don't know, it was just one of these things that I didn't pick up on. I think I just got it into my mind. But I didn't actually realise you were born in London until I looked into it. I mean, I always thought you were a bit of a northern lad for some reason. I don't know whether it was kind of how you went up there to bowl or what. I just thought you were a northern lad for some reason. But, I mean, and I think I was reading that Tottenham was your team. And another thing I realised is I'm actually the same age as you, and I remember that Terry Venables side with Lineker, Gascoigne, and it felt like the kind of Harlem Globetrotters at the time, and everyone wanted to see them play. I mean, was that part of the kind of you following them, or was it all about geography?
Yeah, so I really fell in love with Tottenham from the 91 FA Cup final where they beat Nottingham Forest, and yeah, the team of Gascoigne and Lineker, Gary Mabbott at the back was a bit of my idol. But that sort of side led me to follow Spurs. And then, yeah, that was it then. I've obviously been a Spurs fan ever since. When I was playing, of course, sort of didn't follow them as much. But now I've finished playing, I'm sort of back on it and, back to being a bit of a loyal Spurs fan again.
Yeah. Well, like you said, it all started for you at Charlton Athletic, and you mentioned Alan Kirbysley. It was during those years where he kept defying the odds and keeping Charlton around mid-table in the Premier League, and he had the likes of Scott Parker, Chris Powell in the ranks. I mean, and I was reading that they also had a link with Inter Milan, that you went over there to train. So it must have been some experience to come through at Charlton at that time.
Yeah, so that was literally as I was finishing school doing my GCSEs, my exams. Charlton was just forming a link with Inter, and there was talk of first team players going to and from and doing a bit of a sort of loan move exchange sort of thing, but that never really materialised. And then they decided to do it with the youth team. So of course I was just about to start my scholarship, and it was actually while I was doing my GCSEs, they told me would I be interested in going, and of course I was straight away sort of yes, I'm going. So me and another lad knew we was going and had to try and get through the GCSEs with that on our minds, which didn't help. Then, of course, I started pre-season with Charlton in July, and then I think it was delayed a little bit, so we didn't end up going to sort of September, October time. I think we ended up there. But yeah, what a great experience to just to sort of learn a different culture, a different way of living. Of course, it was the first time that I'd moved away from home, so all that was a new experience. But I think just that, it was only there 4 months in the end. But I think that experience helped me as a young lad coming through, and my belief and what I learned there to sort of help me turn pro and go on from there, really.
Yeah. Well, you moved on to Brentford in 2004, who were then playing their trade in League One rather than the Premier League club we know now, which is a bit odd. But you had a couple of years under Martin Allen, and he always seems, you always hear stories from ex-players who played under him, and he's done a couple of podcasts himself. And the more I hear about him, the more he seems like a character that is pretty rare in the game now. I mean, how did you find playing for him?
Yeah, I absolutely loved playing under Martin Allen. I think the 2 years I had there really, really helped my career. I learned so much under him. Even when I first went there, I think I was 19 or 20, but I was sort of quite underdeveloped in my body. And I remember when I first went there, I didn't perform very well at all, actually. And he constantly played me to sort of let me sort of get through the bad period. Then after a couple of months, I sort of started to come good and started to perform consistently. And he was a massive help for me there. He was a little bit old school in some of the things he'd done, but yeah, he was a good sort of mentor for me at that age, for me to sort of learn and learn professional football, really. So he was a huge help, and probably I'd say one of the best managers I had in my career, I'd say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you made that move to Brentford, and like you said, you were still pretty young, and it's a move that so many players who come through a Premier League club seem to have to face. In terms of dropping down to gain the experience of first team football. I mean, for you, was it a no brainer? And do you think when you look back at it, it made you a better player by going back down to the Football League and working your way back up?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So going back to the Charlton thing, I turned pro there, and I spent probably 18 months maybe in and around the first team in terms of training with them and travelling with the team to away games and in the squad for home games. But I was never involved in sort of match day squads. So I was getting a bit frustrated, and I was only 20. And like you said, the team was in the Premier League consistently finishing mid-table. So it was hard for the manager, Alan Kirbysley, at the time to actually sort of give me my opportunity. So I always knocked on his door and said about going out on loan and gaining experience, and he was all for it, actually. I think there's a time where they were a bit short at centre-back, so he couldn't let me go. But when the time actually came, I moved to Brentford for 3 months, and then they wanted to sign me permanently. And I ummed and ahed about it because obviously I still had a couple of years at Charlton. And actually, Scott Parker once told me you should always try and stay at a Premier League club for as long as you can. So that always weighed on my mind. So to actually make the decision to go down to League One was a big one, but I knew I needed to sort of grow as a young pro and learn my trade, and League One was probably the best place for it. Obviously, getting knocked around and playing with sort of older pros and more experienced players, it was absolutely perfect for me at the time.
Well, we've just watched 4 years of League One football, so we know only too well
Yeah.
how strikers and defenders get buffeted about. But yeah, I mean, you then became Phil Parkinson's first signing for Hull City in the summer of 2006. It was around 350,000, and he signed you. Came in and he replaced Peter Taylor as manager at Hull. But it didn't go well for Phil Parkinson, and he only lasted until December. And I think, Sunderland fans have very mixed feelings about his recent spell as our manager. And he seemed to me as a manager who was he got his team very organised, but his philosophy seemed to be all about not conceding goals. I mean, did he have that approach at Hull, or was your experience a bit different?
Yeah, no, I'd say Weir's probably very defensive minded when he was manager. For me, it was so after 2 years playing at Brentford in League One, he was manager of Colchester in League One. So I played against his team a couple of times. And of course, he had a good move to a Championship club, and I was desperate to move to the Championship at that time after 2 years in League One. So when Hull came calling, it was a no-brainer for me to work under Phil Parkinson and sort of step up in terms of level of football club. So yeah, it was a great move for myself, and I think that, there's a few new players came into the club. He obviously bought the players he wanted, and it just didn't sort of click early on really with the players that were already there and the new players coming in. We had a tricky start. We lost the first 2 games, and then just things sort of spiralled out of control. Really, couldn't sort of get hold of things. And I remember you saying about the defensive thing. I remember working hard on defending because we was losing games, and that's what you do. But just couldn't quite get it. And then Phil Brown came in as a coach, which I don't think was Phil Parkinson's idea. It was from above. So from that moment, you sort of felt that if things continued to sort of go wrong, then Phil Parkinson would have been on his way, and there's every chance that Phil Brown's going to step into the hot seat.
Yeah, well, like you said, he did. I mean, obviously another character, we're talking about Martin Allen, but he kept the club up and then won the promotion through the playoffs the following season. Then you had the likes of Nick Barmby, Michael Bridges, JJ Kocher. He had a spell there during that season. Fraser Campbell was there. And of course, Dean Windass, who scored that winner in the playoff final. But with the way that promotion followed such a disappointing year, I mean, was this one of the highlights of your career in terms of, a season that you look back on?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think getting promotion, especially for me, leaving a Premier League club as a young lad, and when you're in League One, you feel like the Premier League is like on a different planet to where you are in League One, to be honest. And obviously, I knew I wanted to make that step to the Championship. I thought I was ready, and then after a year struggling, coming into that second year, the club brought in some fantastic players, some world class players players like JJ, and you had Nick Barmby there and others. We really felt we could give it a good go, and that certainly was probably one of the highlights of my career that year. Or the Wembley final, of course. Obviously, Sunderland fans know all about Wembley finals. To play in them games and come through as victorious is incredible. You go from you're playing in a Championship player final, you win it, and then all of a sudden you're a Premier League player. So it's an amazing feeling. It was a great day, and certainly one of the highlights, or the probably highlight of my career actually, that game.
Yeah. And like you said, you made it back. So you were a Premier League player. You'd made it all the way back, which was fantastic. And in that first season for holding the top flight, you won Player of the Year, as you did in the previous year. That ended in promotion as well. But I mean, how did you find that step up from the Championship at that time? Because, there's always talk of the huge gap between the two divisions. I mean, did you find that you had more time on the ball, or was the speed of the game on a different level? I mean, what was the biggest difference as you noticed?
Yeah, again, going into that Premier League season, for me, I was weary, will I be good enough to compete at that level? I remember the first game we had Fulham at home, and early on the ball got played over the top of my right shoulder. I remember turning, and there was a really quick left winger and took it down the line and cut inside and crossed it, and I think they nearly scored from that. And I was thinking that was in the opening few minutes, and I was thinking, God, this is tough straight away. But sort of came through the game. We won that game, and then sort of went on from there. But yeah, certainly in the Premier League, you get more time on the ball. It's just literally staying focused throughout, because once the forward players, the wide players, come to life, and when it's time to do business, their movement's sharp, they're quicker, and it's certainly tougher sort of defending your box. But you get more time on the ball for sure. But it's just I actually, funnily enough, found the Premier League easier than playing in, say, in the Championship League One. I think a lot of players probably tell you that. Obviously, you've got better players around you you're playing with. And for me, I enjoyed. Obviously, I played at Hull. And we was on the back foot quite a bit in games, and for me, that as well as I found I came to life really, making interceptions and clearances and stuff like that. So my first season I played every minute of every game, which was a huge achievement looking back. And we stayed in the Premier League and of course the enemy down the road from you boys went down. Aston Villa done us a favour on the last day to get rid of them, and we stayed up. So that was it was a great season all round.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I mean, you just mentioned you found it a little bit easier. I mean, is that partly down to the physical side of the game? You know, we mentioned in League One where this, big centre forwards, kind of sticking the elbows or whatever like that. But does that part of the game become easier as you go up the pyramid?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're not sort of running behind as much. A lot of the players in front of you, so that does make it easier as a centre back. You sit and see the whole thing instead of being spun down the channel by a centre forward or getting an elbow from a centre forward. So it's completely different games, to be honest, and one I think suited me at that time. So I thoroughly enjoyed the step up, really.
Yeah. Well, as you mentioned, and it's worth mentioning again, Hull stayed up and Newcastle went down. I thought I'd just get that in again, just in case anyone missed it the first time around. And I mean, Hull as well, they finished a point behind Sunderland as Sunderland finished 16th. But I mean, that summer, Steve Bruce was appointed to replace Ricky Sprazier. And then we went on a bit of a spending spree that summer. And one of the deals was to bring you in from Hull City for around £4 million. And that was a few games into the season. I think Stoke City were also hovering around. There was also talk of Liverpool during the previous season as well. And after staying up with Hull, I mean, that must have been a tough decision to make to leave them. So considering that interest, what convinced you to join Sunderland?
Well, again, after my first year, there was rumours about clubs being interested in me. And the Liverpool one was one that I thought was going to happen, actually. I remember the first day of the off-season, I was on holiday and got a phone call from my agent saying Liverpool were interested in taking you. I'm like, what do you think? And I was obviously, of course, I was all over it. But as the summer went on, for one reason or another, it didn't materialise. So I was obviously prepared to start the season with Hull City, and then obviously Sunderland came knocking, and straight away, really, I thought that's a great opportunity. I remember playing at the Stadium of Light for Hull the previous season, and just feeling the atmosphere and the size of the stadium and the fans and everything. It felt a special place. And as soon as obviously Brucey as well as manager was a big pull, because I grew up watching his Man United team and him lifting Premier League trophies, so I thought he'd be a massive help for my development. But yeah, so it was a bit of a no-brainer, really, joining Sunderland. I felt it was a step up from where I was at Hull, and I was thoroughly looking forward to the experience.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Steve Bruce's background as a central defender and played at the top level for Manchester United, bringing your game on. But a lot of players speak highly of Steve Bruce and specifically his man management. I mean, was that part of it? I mean, were you able to speak to others? I mean, was that, that draw of the way Steve Bruce handles his players? Was that part of it?
Yeah, Steve Bruce rang me when the deal was agreed and spoke to me and just said good words on the phone, basically, and made me want to sort of join straight away as well. I think over the time he was there at the club, he was a good man manager for me. Of course, he helped me a lot in different aspects of my game. And yeah, even going into sort of, I remember going to Old Trafford once with I think it was like a early Saturday evening kickoff. It must have been that first year. I think Bentley scored, so I think he drew 2-2 anyway. Just going into that game and his tactics and the way he spoke to the team and got us playing. I think we said it last minute and was unlucky not to win at Old Trafford that day. And then just the way he took the team and put faith in us and the way we went out. I always remember that game for some reason. And he was a good manager and one I thoroughly enjoyed working under.
Yeah, and you signed at the end of that summer transfer window, and you made your debut against Hull City in September, which football always seems to throw these quirks up, like that. But I mean, how did you find your the experience of turning out in front of almost 40,000 at the Stadium of Light, especially against the club that you just left.
Yeah, of course. So I remember signing. I think it's like a Sunday or a Monday I signed, and then the following weekend it was international weekend. So I trained in that weekend, and we had a few days off, and then come back. And obviously, I knew that game was coming up, and I was very, very nervous going into that game, playing against my old club, obviously debut for Sunderland. So I was probably the nervous I remember being going into a game actually. So to sort of get that game out of the way was nice. I remember being on the pitch as we run out for the game, and Lee Cattermole coming up to me and just saying, "Look, just play your normal game, just do what you've done, and just do what you've done to get you moved to Sunderland." Basically, he said that before the game. It really calmed me down. And of course, we battered them really. I think it finished 4-1, and it was a great debut. I remember fully enjoying the experience of playing at the Stadium of Light, and the fans and the whole atmosphere really was a great debut. And I was really looking forward to sort of going on and the team doing well. Like you said, we had a lot of new players, Darren Bent up front, and some great players in the squad. And I couldn't wait to sort of crack on.
Yeah. I mean, I assume that you still consider that fourth goal to be yours, even though officially it was awarded as an own goal.
Yeah. It's I don't know. At the time, obviously, I thought it was mine, but then they give it as an own goal. But it was against my old club, so it didn't bother me too much that it didn't go down to me. But there you go.
Well, I did notice as well. I was watching it back, and I did notice that you immediately, because the ball went in the net, I think you assumed it was your goal to start with, and you immediately, directly ran behind the goal, and then you suddenly realised that you were celebrating in front of the whole City fans.
Yeah,
of course. And then you kind of give them a wave and went the other way.
No. Yeah, so I remember obviously the fans being on that side of the goal. So as I sort of headed it and it got deflected or whatever, I was on that side where the whole City fans were. So I just sort of put my hand up and then run the other way towards the Sunderland fans. But just one of those things really. It would have been nice to have got it, but the fact that I didn't really bother me too much, being my old club and everything. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just with the whole fans after that move. I mean, did they understand why you made the move, or were they a bit couldn't understand why you didn't give it another season with Hull in the Premier League?
Yeah, no, I think they understood. The club, to be honest, Hull didn't really do a great deal to try and keep me. They didn't offer me a new contract or anything. They brought in a couple of players, brought in Jimmy Bullard, for instance, who was on apparently a really good contract, and there's never any talk of me getting a new deal or anything. So once the offer was accepted, then my mind was made up. Really, like I said before, for me it felt like a step up from where I was at Hull, and in terms of stature of club and stuff. So it really was a no-brainer.
Yeah. I mean, that summer we brought in the likes of Darren Bent, Lee Cattermole, Lorik Sarna. And we also signed Buller Zenden about a month or so after you joined. And even though he was getting towards the end of his career, he still showed glimpses of class whenever he got kind of minutes on the pitch. But how was he behind the scenes? Because he'd been there and done it during his career.
Yeah, Buller was firstly, he's a really nice fella to have off the pitch, and it brought so much experience. You look at his CV and playing for Barcelona and Liverpool, straight away he gets your respect, and he didn't disappoint. I don't think on the pitch he put in some great performance. He was sort of in the latter years of his career, but still a great character to have on and off the pitch at the club. And you mentioned Lorik Sarna as well. I didn't really know much about Lorik actually before I joined the club, but another great character. The fact that Brucey gave him the armband, says what he's all about. And I remember playing alongside Lorik when he stepped back into centre back a couple of times, and always done a great job for the team. He was a good character, and we had many good players in the squad at that time. Steve Mulbrank, I mean, what a player he was to play with. The list is a huge list of players, and it was a good time at the club. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I'm sure Buller Zenden still tells everyone that Seaburn Beach is the best one he's ever seen, during his career. But with those players we brought in and with that squad, we were actually 8th in late November after beating Arsenal. It was a good win against Arsenal. But then we didn't win in 14 league games, which meant we only finished 13th after we kind of picked up towards the end of that season. I mean, what was the reaction within the squad at the end of the season? Because was there an element of disappointment with, considering the players we had, especially, I mean, Darren Bent scored 24 Premier League goals that season. I mean, was there a frustration that we didn't finish higher up the table or even have a cup run that year?
Yeah, I think so. I think with the players we had in the squad, we always felt that we was capable of pushing this, as high as we can, really. I think you can't forget, really, the club weren't long in the Premier League, so it's all about survival to start with, getting to that 40-point mark, which everyone talks about. So once we've done that, it was a disappointment that we never managed to sort of push on again. I think sometimes, when there's talk of survival, you sort of get to the 40-point mark and sort of relax a little bit and then performance die off. But I think it was also important that we finish the season strong in the end, and then obviously look forward to the next season.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I mentioned the squad, but what was Steve Bruce's assessment of that first year? I mean, did you get the impression he had bigger expectations, or was he quite happy with that kind of mid-table finish?
No. Well, personally, I think he probably would have been happy with mid-table for his first season with the new players that came in. I think you only have to look at going into the following season with the calibre of play he brought in after that. Was another step up, really. And I think that, obviously everyone's intention was to go on again and kick on further, which we felt was a real possibility with the players that were coming through the door at the time.
Yeah, I mean, we had a really good group of defenders that season. We had yourself, Anton Ferdinand, John Mensah. He also made his debut from the bench against Hull as in the game that you did. Paulo da Silva was there as well.
Yeah.
And you played more than anyone in the centre of defence for us that year. But did it feel a bit unsettled that, the person who was next to you always seemed to change week to week?
Yeah, I think it did. I played with Anton when I first came in and enjoyed playing with Anton, actually. I'm not sure Brucey was a big fan of him. Obviously, I think it's been mentioned about the problems they had and the arguments and stuff, but I enjoyed playing with Anton. And of course, Paolo played a little bit, and then John Mensah, unfortunately, couldn't keep himself fit. But he was an absolute great player, John Mensah. He was absolutely solid, I thought. It's just a shame he couldn't stay on the pitch. So it is unsettling as a centre back, not having someone next to you who you can build up that sort of relationship with and build on. So that was a bit of I do remember being frustrated at the time at that, but obviously for me it's just about playing as much as I can and just trying to take care of my own performances.
Yeah. It was also the year that Jordan Henderson really began to establish himself as a first team player. And I remember initially he kind of impressed more as a wide player than the central midfielder that he became later on. But what were your impressions of Jordan Henderson as kind of you joined the club? And I mean, early days, I imagine nobody can see these things, but was there ever any potential where you thought, yeah, he can go on to the top level that he's actually went on to reach?
Yeah, I don't think anyone's probably believed he could do what he has done, actually. But certainly when he came into the first team environment, when he trained with us, and you could see he always produced something out of the ordinary, whether that was a pass or a goal in training. He'd always show glimpses of something special. And I think he also played a fair few games where he was off the bench or started. He made a good few appearances at a young age. And when he moved, I suppose it was a bit of a surprise, the size of the fee and everything. But of course, he's gone on to be an absolute legend at Liverpool, and it's been great to see, to sort of experience his younger years at a professional level, and for him to go on and do what he's done is very sort of pleasing to see.
Yeah. And I mean, he obviously went on to be England captain, and I mean, going on that England subject, I mean, there were rumours and stories at the time that you were close to getting an England call-up, that season where you were with Hull and that first year or two with Sunderland. I mean, was there any whispers that you might be close or it might happen?
Yeah, so I was in a couple of provisional squads. So they named like a 32-man squad before they narrow it down, before the team meet. And I remember the second season, actually, the game where we played Chelsea at Stamford Bridge and won 3-0. I was in the provisional squad then, and I found out I knew I was going to find out after the game whether I made it or not. And we won 3-0, and I was thinking to myself, "Cool, I might have half a chance here." But I remember sitting on the bus and the chief exec coming onto the bus and sort of just looking at the bus and sort of shaking their head. So it was obviously a no. And then after that game is, of course, international weekend. And the following game after that was Everton at home. I think it was a Monday night, and got injured in that game. I hurt my knee on the post. Unfortunately, after that I was out for 4 months. So that was really, from that moment, is sort of the end of the dream, I suppose, of getting involved in the England squad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just go back to that kind of second summer with Sunderland, because Steve Bruce obviously strengthened the squad once again. And I think the big sign in that summer was Asamoah Gyan for around 13 million from Rennes, who impressed during that World Cup that summer. I mean, did he make an immediate impression when he turned up for training in pre-season?
Yeah, he was certainly a different character, very laid back and chilled, and liked to have a laugh and everything. He was a good guy to have around, and lads really took to him straight away. I think if I remember right in training, I don't think he set the world alight, but of course going into games and stuff, he really sort of come of age and showed his class. He scored some good goals for the club, and I remember him being a real threat up front, and after obviously losing Bentley the previous season for the club, to sort of replace him with Asamoah was good business, I thought.
Yeah. And I mean, I think we brought in Titus Bramble from Wigan, and Nedum Manoa from Manchester City on loan, Danny Welbeck. So all these young players were kind of coming in on loan. I mean, was there a good atmosphere around the place with the new faces Steve Bruce had added to the squad that summer?
Yeah, I think everyone likes to see new players come in. Of course, you're half concerned whether that's someone coming in to replace you. But for me, I didn't think like that. I know obviously John O'Shea and Wes Brown came in. Was it that year? Was that year they came in? Was that for I can't remember.
I think they came in the next year, I think.
The following year, that's right. So so Titus and Nedum Manoa, I know obviously knew two good players. And I really enjoyed playing with Titus, actually. We actually built up a good partnership, I thought, and it's disappointing. Actually, we played in that Chelsea game together, actually, and it was the following week he wasn't available for whatever reason, and that's the game I got injured. But certainly the players that come through the door that summer were massive list for everyone.
Yeah, it was only the 6th game of that season. We went to Anfield to take on Liverpool, who were struggling under to Roy Hodgson at the time. And after only 5 minutes, they score a goal after Fernando Torres runs onto a back heel that you'd done to give the ball back to Simon Mignolet for a kick. And considering it was something you'd probably done 1,000 times before, I mean, the whole thing was just a bit of a farce. I mean, did Stuart Attwell get a bit of stick from the Sunderland players?
Yeah, certainly got a bit of stick from me. Obviously, at the time, I was literally knocking it back to Simon Mignolet, who was in goal, for him to come and take the free kick. And Fernando Torres, I think, was a bit cheeky, really. He knew what I was doing, but he ran onto it and made out that I'd taken the free kick, and Dirk Kuyt ran out alongside him. He squared it and tapped it in. So straight away, all the players were over to the referee, and I remember Stuart Attwell not being my favourite referee, not because of that, but for other reasons as well. I didn't really rate him as a referee, to be honest with you. I know he was a young referee at the time. But yeah, I just felt it was a shocking decision, really. Like, anyone who would have played the game as a referee would have known that I wasn't taking the free kick. I was backing in it. Jesus, you know what I mean? No chance of me backing in the ball anywhere on the football pitch, to be honest, let alone in that situation. So it was disappointing, of course, a bit embarrassing, really, at the end of it, looking back and the way it all unfolded. I remember obviously Brucey having my back. He was raging with the ref. So just one of those things, really. You know, I can laugh at it now, but at the time it wasn't very funny. That's sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, Attwell gave us a penalty later on in that game, so I don't know whether he was, leveling things up a bit. But yeah, I mean, we drew 6 of the first 8 fixtures in the league, which was a bit frustrating that year. But then we travelled to St James's Park on Halloween to take on Newcastle United, and we were doing well. We were sitting 7th, only 1 defeat in the first 9. It was your first experience of the derby, but it all kind of went wrong as we went down 5-1. I mean, looking back now, was there anything in the preparation where something wasn't quite right, or was it just one of those days?
Yeah, no, I'd say our preparation was spot on as always. it was just literally, like you say, one of those days. Just things went wrong from early on, and kept going wrong. And in the atmosphere, I'd say personally for me, I underestimated the derby. To be honest with you, going into the game, I didn't feel what the fans felt, of course, not being from the area, but just it was the whole atmosphere was completely different to anything I'd ever experienced, and obviously going into the game, I still had belief in and what was happening and stuff, but it was just like I say, one thing unfolded after another, and we let silly goals in, and then we give a penalty away for half time, and it was a tough one to take. And going in, I was 3-0 down at half time, I think maybe, and being in at half time and sort of realising what had just gone on, it was sort of damage limitation going out for the second half, and obviously it got slightly worse, and that was certainly the lowest point of my Sunderland career, that game. But saying that, I think after that we sort of galvanised ourselves a little bit and put ourselves together. And I know some of the fans never sort of really forgave Brucey for that result. Maybe understandably, maybe not. But I think from that moment, like I say, we picked up. We done well after that. So it was, it certainly affected all the lads. We felt the pain of the fans. And it was a difficult time soon after that game for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned you underestimated it. I mean, obviously Steve Bruce being from up in the area, did he emphasise before the game, what that atmosphere was going to be like and how kind of big that game was?
Yeah, I don't think he failed to sort of tell us what it's like. I just think you can't really know what it's all about until you're there and until you're in the moment, especially being obviously it's James's Park at their place with majority of their fans wrapped around you. It was tough, and like I say, we started the game badly, and they were obviously confident in what they were doing, and they obviously had a decent side themselves at the time, and it was just a real tough afternoon, and one that we needed to sort of get out of our minds as soon as we could, and sort of move on.
Yeah. And I mean, like you said, it was only a couple of weeks later that we went to the capital to take on Carlo Ancelotti's Chelsea and came away with a 3-0 win. That day, everything went right. Nedum Onuoha started things off where he turned into Messi and kind of just took on the whole of the Chelsea team. And Asamoah Gyan and Danny Welbeck got the others. And it was a run where we went to kind of 4 unbeaten after that defeat against Newcastle. Was that a sign of how that team was, how that squad was, that they had bounced back from that Newcastle game with those sort of results and that sort of run?
Yeah, I think we was always confident in the squad we had, and then the opportunity we had to sort of do something special as a team. Like I say, that game was a huge setback, but we did galvanise ourselves after that and put in some good performances, and we felt that we're sort of going in the right direction, albeit sort of on the back of that result. So we was confident that we could crack on again, and do something good in the season.
Yeah. And like you said earlier, I mean, you suffered a knee injury in a draw against Everton, which ruled you out till April, which was obviously a blow. But I mean, do those injuries maybe hit a bit harder when you're in such good form personally and the club were getting the results and pushing for the top 6? I mean, is that when injuries really, hit harder than maybe if you're out of form and maybe need a rest in some way?
Yeah, it always seems to happen like that, to be honest. I think when you're flying high, teams doing well, that's when you always seem to sort of pick up these injuries. And for me, that was the first real injury I'd ever had. So I must have been 27, I think, and that was my first bad injury, and that ruled me out for sort of 4 months. But even coming back from that in the April, I definitely wasn't quite right. I needed time to sort of keep improving my knee and my physical sort of the place where I was, and it took me a while to get over that injury actually, and that was the sort of biggest disappointment really. That injury came. Obviously, you can't do much about injuries, but at the time, I felt that I was kicking on. I felt like there was room for me to improve and go again, and I was excited about the future. And obviously, to pick up that injury was a bit of blow for myself, and probably the start of a sort of downward spiral for my time at the club, unfortunately.
Yeah. It was in that January while you were injured. I mean, we were sitting pretty in 6th in the Premier League. And then the whole Darren Bent saga seemed to snowball, and then he ended up signing for Aston Villa. I mean, when these things are going on, situations like that, when a player contributes so much, 24 goals in the previous season, does it affect the other players in the squad, or do most players just get on with the job?
I think you are concerned, obviously. Goal scorers in football are the hardest things to find, and when you've got one in your team, you certainly don't want to lose them. And I think the most surprising thing was that Benny seemed happy at the club. Do you know what I mean? He had loads of good mates at the club, and he was scoring goals. He was a great character to have on and off the pitch, and for him to sort of move on was a big blow to us. Of course, we was concerned. Everyone wondered where the goals would come from. We had other players capable in the team, but to have that focal point in your team who can almost guarantee you goals is hard to replace. And yeah, for sure, like you're concerned about where the replacement is going to come from.
And you hinted there that it seemed like it was a surprise that he ended up leaving. So there were no hints along the way that things weren't quite right.
No, I wouldn't say so. No, I don't know if there's anything going on in the background that he must have known about. But for us as players, there was never really any fault with him leaving. So when it did happen, it was a blow immediately after. But then, of course, you have to go again. You have to sort of concentrate on your own performances and try and help the team and go forward.
Yeah. Well, and Stefan Sessegnon was signed in what seemed to be Darren Bent's replacement at the time, although I'm not sure he was a straight swap in terms of a goal scorer at the time. But he was one of the most skillful players I've seen play for Sunderland. I mean, he must have been a nightmare to play against in training.
Yeah. Sess was he was a great player to add to the squad. Again, another player I didn't really know too much about before he came in, but straight away you could see in training what he was all about, and he produced some great performances in games as well. He was certainly a huge player for the club, and one we was all pleased to have in the side there for sure.
Yeah. But again, I mean, similar to the season before, we went on to win only 3 of the remaining 14 games and finished 10th because that was due to winning on the final day of the season at West Ham United. So there were parallels in terms of that frustration that we hadn't managed to kick on from being 6th in early February. We were also knocked out the FA Cup by Notts County that season. So would you say that, looking back at those squads that we had, that we kind of underachieved with the players that we had at that time?
I'd probably say so. But when you as you're talking there, and you're saying we finished 10th in the Premier League, it's not bad now. I'm sure the fans would take that straight away now, wouldn't they? But like you say, with the players we had, maybe we should have kicked on really and gone again. But obviously there was disappointments during the season. Obviously for me getting injured, then like you say, Bentley leaving. So there was bits and pieces to deal with, and finishing 10th, they don't sound too bad really. Finishing mid-table in the Premier League, of course. But again, we finished the season, and everyone was looking forward to the following season and going and trying to step up another level.
Yeah, I'd be chuffed with 10th in the Championship this season. Never mind 10th in the Premier League. But yeah, I think you touched on it earlier. Steve Bruce then brought in 2 defenders from Manchester United the following summer, Wes Brown, John O'Shea, who'd been around the Old Trafford first team for probably about a decade. So I mean, did they settle in straight away, considering they were both around 30, 31, but they'd spent their whole career at the best club in the country, at the top of the league. I mean, did they take a while to get settled into their new surrounding?
I think they did. Obviously, joining together probably helped them settle in to the club. But in terms of them performing on the pitch, I felt it probably took a while. And but again, they were 2 fantastic characters to bring in. Just when players like that come into a club, and you feel like you have to sort of step up your game yourself just to sort of be on a level with them. And again, 2 great players who had 2 great careers. We felt as players that the club are really trying to bring players in to take us to that next level. But I definitely feel, like you say, it took them a while to really sort of find their feet and produce the performances that everyone probably expected straight away.
Yeah. But I mean, having said that, we started the season kind of quite well at Liverpool, picked up a point through a spectacular goal from Seb Larsson. I remember that kind of bicycle kick volley type thing he did at the back post. Then we were beaten by Newcastle at home in the following fixture. And then Asamoah Gyan left just before the transfer window closed. And did you feel a change in the atmosphere at the beginning of that season that things weren't quite right with the likes of Jan leaving and the results kind of not, we weren't getting the victories, we were getting some draws, but I mean, were the signs that things were kind of tailing off?
No, not really. I always believed that we was going to come good in that season. Like I said, we brought in a few new players, of course, brought in Gardner and Larson as well, two really good signings. So I always felt that the team would have come good, and I think for me it was a huge disappointment when the manager left. I think also we did have some bad results in that period, and of course, I think his last game was at home to Wigan, wasn't it? Which was a game we should have won comfortably, to be honest with you. I remember a hatful of chances. Then after that, obviously the manager left, but again. Asamoah leaving, I think that was, again, completely out of the blue. No one had a clue what was happening with that one. And, from what we sort of heard and read, it was all to do with, obviously, him earning loads of money. And we thought that was the only reason he left, not because of anything going on with the team or the club at the time. I certainly was confident that the team was going to come good and was going to crack on that season.
Yeah. And, I mean, we only won 2 of the first 13 games before Steve Bruce was sacked. I mean, you mentioned there it was a blow. Obviously, he was good for you personally as manager of Sunderland. But, I mean, did it come as a shock and a surprise for the players? But, considering that we'd actually been in a bad run of form that stretched back to Christmas if you took the previous season into account.
Yeah, I suppose from that point of view, you understand it. But like I said, the new players that came into the club were always quality players, and for me, they was always going to come good. And I think just needed a little bit more time to sort of ride out that bad period. And I think we would have come through it. I do believe that. But of course, the club made the decision, and you move on as a player, and look forward to a new regime.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the kind of turnaround of players, and looking back at quite a lot of managers' careers, but Steve Bruce as well. I mean, they seem to have a natural shelf life at a single club. I mean, does it get to a point where if there isn't a big turnaround with the players, I mean, they end up hearing the same things day in, day out, and sometimes there just has to be a change to freshen things up?
Yeah, I think that is the case. But like I said, there was new players that came in, so that did freshen it up. I don't know really. Like I say, I was disappointed the manager left at the time. Like the fans probably were calling for Bruce's head, and they got their wish in the end. I guess the majority of them, but I just felt it wasn't really the right time from my point of view. Maybe the fans think differently, but I was certainly disappointed that they gave him a bit longer for sure.
Yeah. Well, it was Martin O'Neill who followed Steve Bruce and got the job. And I remember a lot of excitement amongst the fans because quite a lot of fans had wanted Martin O'Neill to take the job at various points in the past. And I remember a story from Niall Quinn at the time saying, just after he was appointed, saying that he just kind of provided energy to the whole place. And once he got going, that that he would always kind of run down the corridors instead of walking and all this sort of stuff. I mean, yeah. Did he have a similar impact on the players? Because our results did actually improve that year when O'Neill came in.
Yeah, he definitely gave us a lift coming in. He's sort of quirky character. Everyone knew what he'd done at Aston Villa, and everyone believed it was a good appointment for the club. Certainly, I was looking forward to sort of working under Martin O'Neill. For me, I'd never quite felt that I was his type of player. I don't think I can't remember now, but I don't think I played the start of his sort of regime coming in. Actually, I think I was injured when he first came, so that was a bit of a blow. But yeah, no, he certainly gave the place a lift. I remember he used to name the team like at 1:30 on a Saturday, and he used to come into the changing room. Obviously, we're prepared through the week, but no one knew if there's a plan or not. And he used to, a bit of paper reading out the team sheet, and he used to read it so quickly that about 5 or 6 of the lads didn't know if they was in the team or not. So we'd read the team out and then go back to his office, and the lads are looking at each other saying, "Are you playing? Are you playing?" No one knows they're playing. I think I'm playing. I'm not sure. I always remember that. He always used to do that. You got used to it after a while. You sort of just have to really sort of listen in to the lineup and to see if he was playing. But no, he certainly he was good in and around the changing room. Actually, I always remember him motivating the players really well. I think day to day on the training pitch, he let old Wally do most of the training, but he certainly he got going on match days, and he was good in and around the changing room, going out to games and motivating the lads.
Yeah, I'd imagine. But the frustrating one in the remainder of that season for me, especially because of the improvement in that initial period after Martin O'Neill was appointed, was the FA Cup quarter-final replay with Everton at the Stadium of Light. We'd just beaten Queen's Park Rangers 3-1 and moved up to 8th in the Premier League. And then we had the quarter-final replay, actually, because we drew it at Goodison. And it was in front of 43,000. You know, we were thinking, quarter-final at home, replay, night match under the floodlights, all that sort of stuff. But we just didn't seem to turn up, and Everton kind of won the game 2-0. I mean, what were your memories of the game, and how was the dressing room afterward?
Again, I remember drawing at Goodison Park in the first game, and having the opportunity to bring it back to the Stadium of Light, which we knew would be rocking. Evening game, of course, and we believed that we was going to go on to win that game and get to the semi-final. Like you say, I think we just really didn't turn up. Nothing really went well on the night, and I remember Everton having a good back in that night, and they scored the first goal, and we found it tough to get back into it from there. They had, of course, an experienced team with some really good players, as we did, and just remember that being a bit bitterly disappointing evening, and an opportunity we missed out on, really, going to Wembley. I think because they drew Liverpool in the semi-final, so it would have been a great occasion to experience that.
Yeah, was it one of those games where it was a pretty dark place, the dressing room afterwards? Did everyone realised, that they'd missed out on that opportunity to get through to the semi-final?
Yeah, I think you do. I think going into the game, you're one game away from playing at Wembley, albeit a semi-final, but still. So going in after the game, you always, hugely disappointed that you've missed that opportunity, and as a player, you don't know when them, chances are going to come round again. So it was a tough blow. That I remember that feeling really low after that game, but of course you have another league game coming up, and you sort of move on.
Yeah. Well, it must have had an impact, because actually we didn't win a game for the rest of the season after that. And you were never present, actually. You were saying that you might have been in and out the side under O'Neill, but you were never present from the beginning of February until the end of the season, and you made 27 starts that season. But then in the summer, you made the move to Norwich City. So, I mean, I was looking at the stats that year, and looking back, it seems like it was maybe an odd thing that you left that summer, but was it something that you were considering throughout that season?
Not really. I think, like I said, I always felt that I wasn't sort of Martin O'Neill's type of player. Like I said, I think because I didn't play when he first came in, and then I think the games I played towards the end of the season was because I don't think there's anyone else to play, really. So that's why I felt I played. And then going into the summer, I remember Carlos Quayer come to the club, and I think Tony Wales as a player, he's brought in a player he knows at Aston Villa, and I thought, my time could be up here. And then, of course, I wasn't really looking for a move, to be honest. And then my agent said that Norwich are in for you. What do you think about that? And Martin O'Neill was obviously keen on me, and just felt it was a good opportunity for me to sort of move further down south, nearer back home, and to another Premier League club. Norwich have had 1 year in the Premier League, and obviously moving to a Premier League club is always a big achievement. So I felt it was a good step for me at the time.
Yeah, I mean, as a player, sometimes is it more of a feeling you get about a manager where you think, I'm not sure whether he quite, gets me as a player or like that? Is it more of a feeling than, a sit down and a talk, and is it just, I'm not sure about this?
Yeah, I think you get a feeling from whether you play or not, how they talk to you, how they leave you out the team, or just a lot of things, really. You just you sort of sense it, and I sensed that from the start with Martin O'Neill that I wasn't really his type. And like I say, when Carlos Quayer came in the summer, similar sort of player to me, I suppose, that I thought the writing was on the wall. But, for my time there, unfortunately, because I'd had 3 years there and thoroughly enjoyed, some of the times playing the Stadium of Light was fantastic. A full house there is very special, and I was disappointed it came to an end, but just felt that all the time was right, really, with the manager and my circumstances.
Yeah, and I know you'd kind of picked up an injury. But like, it seemed odd with that 27 starts. You were kind of never present for the last few months of the season. It just seemed a bit odd that suddenly you just disappeared, especially at a time when we weren't really spending the money and kind of with the squad we had the next season. I would have expected kind of you to have actually played a fair amount of games that next season.
Yeah. Like I say, it was disappointing that I ended up leaving. I suppose obviously I had to look forward to the next step, but leaving the club of Sunderland, having 3 years there, and just felt I was sort of, like I say, I had a bad knee injury, then I had another knee injury when the manager came in. I just felt I was sort of coming through that period and coming back to sort of my old self really, and felt I had a lot to offer, but manager had other ideas, and you sort of accept it and sort of move on.
You then had a couple more years playing in the Premier League with Norwich City, and then the Championship after they were relegated, before you joined Southend United, which led you back to the Stadium of Light in October 2018, as we were getting used to life in League One. Sunderland won the game 3-0, but it was obviously good to see you play there again with Southend, because, I mean, I doubt you expected us to end up in the same league when you first joined Southend.
Yeah, no, certainly not. I didn't believe that I'd ever play at the Stadium again, that's for sure. I remember obviously the fixture list coming out, and probably that was the first fixture I looked at actually to go back there. And I always remember getting a good reception from the fans. Sunderland was always a nice club when you went into the stadium, through the reception area, down the stairs. You know, there's always nice people to say hello to, and there was the same old faces there, of course. And it was great to go back and experience it all again. Also at the time, Southend, we didn't have the greatest side, and Sunderland, of course, were pushing to get back promotion to the champ. So it was always going to be a tough game. I think we started all right, actually. We lost our left back through a bad injury, and then 1-0 down at half time, and then Wolves come off second half for us a little bit. But again, it was great to play back at the stadium in front of the fans, albeit not a full house, but some of the loyal fans. And it was another good experience for myself.
Yeah, and then you finally kind of hung up your boots in 2019 after a couple of years at Southend. And yeah, as we mentioned, you had your fair share of injuries during your career. So when the time came, was it an easy decision for you to call it a day?
Yeah, I don't know really. It was a weird one, because I played quite a few games that last season. Picked up another few injuries, of course, but managed to play probably near over 30 games. I think I played that season. So I felt I was probably worthy of the club maybe give me another year, but they said I wasn't going to get another year, which is fair enough. I think I just played my 500th game in professional football, and my last game was against Sunderland. So I looked at it all and thought, this writing's on the wall, really. My last game against Sunderland, I've played 500 games, I've 35, I had a few injuries. I just felt the time was right, really. We needed to win that game, of course, to stay up, and we did. Like I say, it was just ironic. It was against Sunderland, and I just felt the time was right then for me to sort of finish playing professionally. I had a couple of offers, non-league sort of stuff, but wasn't really for me. So, yeah, called it a day. And, obviously great memories of so many things in football, and played for some great clubs, of course, Sunderland, Hull City, and Norwich in the Premier League. So I count myself lucky that I managed to play 6 full seasons in the Premier League. And, it's a career I certainly could look back and be proud of.
Yeah. And I know, speaking to other players, it sometimes sounds difficult for players after they've spent so long in the game. And I think quite often the assumption is made that they all just want to stay in the game, in some capacity, whether it's coaching, management, youth development, whether it's being an agent or whatever it might be. I mean, were all those options, was that something you considered?
Yeah, so for me, coaching has never really been one for me. A lot of players do their badges coming towards, they do it from a young age now, but they, towards the end of your career, you start looking at your next career and what you're going to do. And a lot of players do their badges. For me, I never really fancied doing them, never really fancied coaching, so I've never done them. And for me, I had an opportunity to go into an agency world, really. Not so much sort of wheeling and dealing as an agent, but just sort of mentoring a few younger players. So that's what I do now, in between other stuff with property and that. So I've got my sort of toe in the water with football still, which is nice, and I still watch academy games and a few first team games. So it is nice to sort of go back to the stadium and watch from a fan's perspective and watch players individually. So it's nice, yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned Spurs right up top. So I assume do you get the Spurs quite often and watch them when they're playing?
I'll go to Spurs probably 3 or 4 times a season to watch them. Obviously, a lot of their games are on the telly, of course. So generally watch a lot of their games on the box. So like I say, it was funny when I played against Tottenham, but didn't have any sort of emotion towards them. But now we're all finished and stuff. It's all come back. It's quite weird, but it's nice. Following the team again and just being a fan now.
Yeah. Being a Spurs fan, what do you think of Jack Clarke signing permanently for Sunderland? What do you think of that deal?
Yeah, good signing. I didn't watch a great deal of Sunderland actually last year, but of course I knew he was at the club, and I'm sure he's added a lot to the squad, and the fact that he's signed now, he's permanent now, isn't he?
Yeah, he signed permanent.
I think it's a great signing for the club, and I like where they're at actually, Sunderland. I think they've got a good opportunity to do well in the Championship. Obviously, I know the manager from a bit of my time at Norwich, so I know he'll be doing all the right things to get the boys in the right shape for the new season.
Yeah, and Dennis Serkin as well. He was a player who was highly rated at Spurs, and we managed to take him last season, and he had a great first year. But he was quite highly rated, especially with the likes of Jose Mourinho. I think he rated him highly there.
Yeah. Again, I think Sunderland is always going to attract these good young players, and obviously the loan window is a great opportunity for these players to get experience and to help their own careers and help the club, which obviously has helped Sunderland last year. And I'm sure the club will make signings to improve themselves going into back in the Championship.
Yeah, and you never know, if we make another jump up, you might be going along to Spurs to watch Sunderland next season.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Well, yeah, no, I'd honestly love to see the club back in the Premier League. I mean, especially the first 2 years I say at the club, some of them home games I remember playing in front of full houses against obviously the beach ball goal with Liverpool, and we were playing Spurs at home actually early on a Saturday. We played them and beat them at home. Games against United, I always remember the atmosphere and full houses at the stadium was a special place to be as a player. I'd love to think that they can get back to them days, and full houses in the Premier League will be great for everyone there.
That's it. You just went through some games there. Like I said, that right up top, it was probably our most successful kind of period in recent history. But yeah, good memories. But on that note, thinking about the Premier League, I just want to say thank you very much for taking the time out for us, Michael, because it is hot today, and I really appreciate you spending the time, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, no problem, Chris. Yeah, it's always nice as being a retired player now to sort of think back on my experiences, and actually some of the questions you asked me, you reminded me of certain bits and pieces and players and stuff. Show me, so it's nice to sort of reminisce about the players I played with, and certainly the time at Sunderland was a huge part of my career that I look back fondly of, and a part of my career I'm certainly proud of.
Good stuff. And if we ever play Spurs in the future, I'm sure we'll be in touch.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, let's go for a beer before, so.
Good stuff. Thanks again, Michael. And thanks again, everyone listening. Keep an eye out on the website, the Roker Report, for the new pods and our ramp up to the new season. But from us, bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.